Beginnings. Beginnings are always difficult. Where did Qissa begin? You could say that my films are about refugees. Refugees in the sense that my teacher, the filmmaker Ritik Ghatak, revealed by asking a simple question: who is not a refugee? I believe my stories are an attempt to simply affirm that truth for myself. The 1947 partition of India, the separation of one country, one people, one culture on the basis of religion, led to 10 million people suddenly becoming refugees, and millions more were massacred in the violence of the time. Qissa emerged from the torment, heartbreak, and discontent that many Indians carry when we think about the religious bigotry and violence so often that flares into mass killings even today. The film asks one main question: how can we escape our deep-seated sectarianism and our patriarchal violence against women, if not by fearlessly rethinking our ideas about what is a home, what is a home, what is a country, gender, identity. Because as a nation, we are possessed by much of the same bigotry and intolerance even today that tore us apart in 1947. Qissa then is about India as nation today. It begins with the partition in our history to look at the discriminations and separations that we continue to sanction within our intimate family, as well as our social, cultural, and political life. The film quite simply attempts to travel within Indian history and conscience to reimagine the boundaries of identity. But of course, this question is not only true for India. One has to simply pick up a daily newspaper and you see a worldwide cycle of violence. The more personal inspiration is my paternal grandfather, one of the millions made a refugee by the partition. And my film Qissa is an enemy's tribute and homage that I offer my grandfather. It is an attempt to put his ghost to rest. Bereft of land, home, country, my grandfather moved to Tanzania, East Africa, where my father grew up and where I was born. My grandfather's tales of the 1947 partition of India scarred my imagination in childhood. I grew up surrounded by my grandfather's tales, but also of relatives and family friends who had lived through the partition. Amongst all the stories I heard from them, there is one that stayed with me and has a lot to do with my film. Many women, as you know, would jump into wells rather than risk rape when their village was attacked during the partition. A very old relative told me that his daughter, hardly a teenager, had jumped into the well too. And now, 60 years later, he still dreams about her. He told me that in his dream he sees her ghost in the well, looking up at the circle of sky above her, waiting for him, her father, to come back for her, to come save her. The story was one of the starting points of Qissa. As you can see, the strange thing with many of these stories is that they start as very real tales, traumatic memories, but often veer off into the imaginary as if to affirm that something else could have happened, that perhaps somehow their lost daughters, sisters, brothers were still living some other life. I really wanted this quality of a fable for Qissa. This film, of course, is very personal on one level, but it also deals with this wound in the memory of our nation that keeps on getting maneuvered and manipulated by our politicians for their own purposes. Throughout his life, my grandfather carried a burning resentment about his loss of home. It tore him apart, and often he could not help but turn on his own family with a despairing, remorseless violence. Somehow, any which way, he needed to avenge his loss. When you view Qissa, you'll immediately see that this is the inspiration for the character of Singh, played by Irrfan Khan. My parents and I were forced to leave Africa much later in my adolescence. This was a devastating journey of homelessness. But with all the pain, I also always carry with me another memory. The memory of that one night on the ship sailing across the vast ocean between Africa and India. A film screen was raised on the deck of the ship, and a movie flickered between the infinite sky above and the boundless sea below. And I knew at that moment that as long as I could invoke this experience of cinema, where it pulsed as a part of the larger cosmos, I would never be homeless. Qissa then is this eternal conflict between two kinds of voyages, two kinds of journeys. One, my grandfather's voyage of despair and a lust for vengeance, and the other mine of affirmation and redemption. As I mentioned earlier, Qissa is a very personal film that I needed to make, and as you might imagine, raising money for it was a nerve-wracking process. I spent about 5 years trying to raise money in India. Most people who read the script thought I was mad as a hatter to want to make such a film. Many others liked the script, but wanted me to make it in Hindi with their choice of actors. NFDC was the only production house in India that not only supported the project from the very beginning, but gave me strength to not give up. But they could contribute only a part of the budget. Fortunately, just as I was losing hope, another project of mine won a prize at the Rotterdam International Film Festival. That allowed me to meet with a range of international producers, and one of them was Bettina Brokemper of Heimat Film, Germany. She agreed to listen to me narrate Qissa over a cup of coffee, and immediately after, my narration stunned me by saying to me and her partner Johannes Rexin that yes, they were going to do the film. After that, though, it still took 3 years of Johannes's determination and cajoling to gather other European partners for the film, and these were the always heartening and nurturing Thierry Lenouel of Ciné Sud, France, and Bero Bayer of Augustus Films, Netherlands. All together, it took 12 years to make this film.